Hey everyone, my name is CJ Gettlefinger and this is Kevin McCarter. And today we are going to be going over your fall roadshow for all the Simple IRAs. We are members of the Sweet K team and we've got a great little presentation to go through today. I'm going to let Kevin kick us off and we'll get rolling.
So I'm going to share my screen here. So your retirement plan education, our agenda for today, we're going to be talking about how to build your emergency fund, the importance of saving for young adults, and then also the importance of your estate plan. And so with that being said, we'll go ahead and get into it. So whenever we talk about developing your emergency fund, it's all caps your. Everybody's emergency fund is different, right? Everybody has different needs, different lifestyle, different finances, etc., different families, right? And so whenever we look at an emergency fund, it has to be your emergency fund. But before we even talk about what it takes to build your emergency fund, we have to understand the goal of an emergency fund. What does an emergency fund even accomplish? First thing it does is it protects you from setbacks. What I mean by that is, as life happens, you don't want it to derail you from your financial goals. You need to have a war chest of money that you can go to war against whatever's coming at you. So it's going to protect you from setbacks. And whenever you're not set back, whenever little mishaps or busted tires or medical bills, etc., don't impact you, it's going to remove a lot of stress out of your life, right? It's going to make your lifestyle better. And so emergency funds are an important piece of this. And these are the two main goals of an emergency fund: to protect you from setbacks so you can keep on accomplishing your goals, and also remove any stress along the way. And some of these stressors, we mentioned one, medical bills, right? Medical bills, like heaven forbid something happens to you here and you're in the hospital. These things can be huge in people's finances, right? And the worst part about these medical bills is the bills keep on coming, right? The interesting thing, we found this graphic and I thought it was funny. It's the bill is x-rays, tests for the test, x-rays of the test, and then tests of the x-rays. And you see a little asterisk down at the price. Maybe this is the price. The worst part about medical bills is they seem like to keep coming. By the time you get these things paid off, another one shows up. And so, as we're talking about this idea of don't let these things set you back, it's important you have money to go back and tackle whatever life throws at you with. Because it's never fun whenever you go to open up your account and you have a bill to pay. You open up your account and it shows you got $2 in your bank account. That is not a fun thing to look at, right? This is a stress-inducing moment whenever you see this. And so the whole goal of an emergency fund here is to really mitigate these issues, to make sure that whenever life happens, you're not set back by it. It doesn't stress you out. And so then the question is, how do you develop an emergency fund? And the first thing you got to do is you got to set a goal. What's interesting about this goal is you got to set it, then you got to work the goal. Because this is something that takes active measures to accomplish. And some measures you might have to do is you might have to adjust your lifestyle. That might mean you not going out to eat as many times, or you not having as Christmas is coming up here. Maybe you don't have as big of a Christmas this year. You adjust your lifestyle so that you can save and free up money. And part of the whole freeing up money piece, maybe you might need to pay off debt to free up cash flow so that you can save. It's a weird way to think about it, of paying off something with money so that you have more money at the end here. But it could be that you need to free up cash flow, because then if you have less of a need for finances, then your goal can likely become less. But a big piece about setting the goal and working the goal is if you can make it automatic, it dramatically helps out your ability to accomplish building this emergency fund the way you want it to. And again, along the way of an emergency fund, building this thing up, expect obstacles to happen. Expect the medical bills to show up. Expect the busted tires. Expect the car repairs. Expect this. Expect the kids going and doing something, Expect obstacles. And because an obstacle comes up that eats away at your emergency fund, does not mean you can't do the goal. This is the part of working the goal. You have to keep on working the goal to make sure you get it accomplished. And again, once it is accomplished, obstacles are going to come up. This money is here to protect you from things that are likely going to happen. And when they do happen, you need to replenish the emergency fund. So again, how do you develop this? You have to set a goal, which we're going to talk a lot about here in a little bit. You got to work the goal, which requires a few different things, expecting obstacles. And then once you hit the goal you're trying to hit, then you got to maintain that thing. And so as we talk about setting the goal, the next question becomes, how much should be in your emergency fund? And there's a lot of broad brushstroke advice of 3 to 6 months of your income, or 3 to 6 months of your expenses, or this times this equals your emergency fund you should have, etc. But really, you should have it as much as your emergency fund as makes you comfortable. But there has to be fact check. It has to be fact checked, and it's making sure you do not hurt your overall goals. Right? If I was to try to save up $1 million in my bank account, because that's what's going to make me feel comfortable, For me to save up $1 million probably means I lost a ton of money and opportunity than otherwise having that money invested. Right? So again, it has to be within reason. It should be as much money as makes you feel comfortable. It should be in your emergency fund without hurting your overall goals. And so we talked about how much makes you comfortable. And the next question is, well, shoot, what's comfortable? Right? And again, it's sort of this like conceptual, different for every person answer. And a comfortable amount is an amount that lets you make a sigh of relief. You open up your bank account and you see the money in there and you smile a little bit, right? An event happens, you open up your bank account and you go, oh goodness, I'm so glad I had that much money in there. And the interesting part about this, working with people and talking to people, is a lot of times spouses have different answers to this. Usually there's one spouse that's a little bit more on the aggressive side and one spouse that's a little bit more on the conservative side. And so this has to be a discussion with your spouse to say what amount of money in reserve is going to make us feel comfortable for our retirement and for daily life. And now, as we're looking at this, a lot of times you hear saying, okay, we saved up this money, now what do we do with it? Right? Where should your emergency fund be? And the common advice you commonly see is your emergency fund should be 100% in the bank. This is the common advice. But I want to propose a little bit of a different idea, a framework to think through here. And you can see here, within your emergency fund, you should have a comfortable emergency fund. And then within that comfortable amount, you should have a comfortable amount that's at touch access. Right? What I mean by touch access is you can pull up your bank account and get access to it immediately. Right? And this is where the bank account money comes in. If you have an expense that you need to pay off today, that should be in the bank account, ready to go, ready to pull the trigger on. And where should this money be? Right now, there's a lot of high-yield savings accounts that are paying 4% plus in interest, right? I mean, 4% plus in interest is great. So SoFi is paying 4 point something. Everbank, last I looked, was paying like 5.05%. I don't know off the top of my head what Capital One's paying. But also be said, these are some high-yielding savings accounts, right? While your money is sitting there on the sideline, still let it be working out a little bit. Still let it be putting or earning some interest, right? Now, again, we talked about you should have as much available to you that is comfortable, right, for your emergency fund. Then within that pocket of money, you should have as much money as you feel you would need at touch access. Because again, how many expenses are more than $10,000 that you need immediately? Not a whole lot, right? How many expenses could you wait 3 days to pay? Probably some, probably most of them, right? And so any excess over the amount that you want to have at touch access just needs to be available to you. Because again, most emergencies, they don't need same day funds, right? They need, okay, we have to pay this in 2 days. Okay, we have a big bill coming up in a week. Oh no, we got a medical emergency. We're going to get a bill in the mail in a month from now. And this goes in to say, like, part of your emergency fund should just be touch access. Some of it should be just available to you if you need it. And any extra you have in your emergency fund, go ahead and put that money to work. Get that money invested. There's a taxable investment accounts that you can actually put money in, and you have access to that money anytime you want it, like within your SIMPLE IRA, or maybe your spouse has a 401k, or you have IRAs here. Those monies are locked up for retirement. A taxable investment account you have access to anytime you want it. And so any excess money, just make sure it's available to you and utilize a vehicle like this that have some money in a high-yield savings account, have some money in a taxable investment account, growing and trying to make good money, good returns. And so we're going to do an example of this because this is a little bit of a different idea, a different framework. We're going to meet Jennifer. To her, a comfortable emergency fund is about $25,000, right? Again, this was not based off 3 times her pay or 3 times her expenses or 6 times this or some multiple times 4 to get to this number of emergency fund. This is just a number she pulled up. I would feel good if I had $25,000 available to me to tackle any sort of thing that life could set at me back with. And now she looked at her $25,000. She said, okay, how much money do I need to have available to me? Like immediately. If I needed it immediately, touch access. And she said, I need touch access to about 10 grand of it. So she put $10,000 in the bank. The remaining $15,000 just needs to be available to her. And so she's going to throw that money into an investment account, one of these taxable individual investment accounts or taxable joint investment accounts. And what's cool about this, she puts in this $15,000 at 30 years old. By the time she's 60, if that $15,000 earns 6%, it can get up to $86,000, right? Just over 30 years, that time frame. That's a big deal. And this goes into why you don't want to have a huge pot of money on the sideline just sitting in the bank because it might not be earning good interest. You want to make sure that your comfortable emergency fund does not hurt your overall goals. And this is one way to do it. Sort of this idea of like partitioning money at different availabilities, right? You have your money in the bank, you have your money in your taxable investment account. And in this case, this ends up adding about, $70,000 to her lifetime pot of money by having some of this money invested. And so again, looking at this, like, just have a framework about it. This answer is different for everybody. We use 25,000 in this example here. Some people, they say, as long as I got 10 grand, I'm cool with that, but I want all 10 grand in the bank. Sweet, do it. Some people, I want 100 grand in the bank account. Okay, sweet. How many expenses do you need 100 grand for? Not a lot. Okay, any extra that you don't think you need it for, throw it into an investment account. Let it be earning some money on the way. And so with that being said, we talked about this idea of saving for an emergency fund, and now CJ is going to talk about why it's important to be saving, especially for young adults.
Appreciate it, Kevin. So, as he said, I'm going to now kind of tag team this, right? We have a budget, but also, and building this emergency fund, but let's also talk about why it's important to start young, why it really matters, why years really start to add up. And the reason behind this is that saving is powerful, right? Money is a tool. Kevin talked about a lot of these expenses, a lot of these unseen expenses that can come up. If we don't have money, we can't necessarily handle those sort of things. So we all know that money isn't necessarily everything, but money's going to help us get where we want to be. And some of the benefits of saving are going to be exactly what Kevin talked about earlier. It's going to mitigate some of these issues for the dreams and goals that we want in our lives. We want to retire. We want to have a big house. We want these nice things that we all want, and we have to be able to build and have a plan to get there. The really magical part of this, and I believe Kevin says it all the time, right, is the eighth wonder of the world is going to be compound interest. Is starting out young is going to give us the most amount of time to be able to reach and achieve the goals that we want later on in life. And we'll go through a few examples of really seeing where that compound interest is going to come into play. And so I know that saving for retirement can kind of seem a little boring and seems like, oh, we're just sitting there delaying, we're pushing off money until the end of our life. But we want to have a shift in mindset. Instead of talking about saving for money and saving for retirement, we want to frame it as we're accumulating wealth. And this quote actually came from Kirsten, who's the head of our 401k department. And she says, if you focus on accumulating wealth, you'll never have to save for retirement. So again, we say this, that saving for retirement might seem far gone, that we're doing something, we're just putting things off for later down the road, but we're actually accumulating wealth. We're building today for who we want to be tomorrow. We think kind of putting that twist on it is going to be exciting and show a different viewpoint of the power of compounding and saving while we're young. Again, Kevin kind of touched on having our emergency fund, and in line with that is going to be the importance of having a budget. So first is we get the emergency fund taken care of, and then once we have that filled up, we got to look at our monthly expenses, where everything goes into play. So we have to align our actions with our intentions. We have to make all of our money accountable. So if you look at this piggy bank, right, we have our car, our mortgage, our savings, our insurance. We need to make sure that we're budgeting. We need to make sure that we're staying on track and we're aligning the goals that we have, because you can get derailed if you're not being accountable. And we want to make sure that we're putting all that money where it needs to be. And then if you see in the back, right, we have that retirement. We want to make sure that we're saving for that retirement. But additionally, at the front of that, we want to make sure that we're living now. We don't want to say that we're just going to put all of our money off. We want to make sure that we're enjoying life, that we are budgeting properly. I know that we had brought up a couple examples of sometimes we have date night. We want to go on date night. And whenever we go over our budget with our spouse, maybe we say, hey, we want to cut back for a few months. You know, we need to save, we need to put a few more dollars away towards the mortgage, or we had car problems. Or we could look and say, hey, life's going good. You know, the bills are falling in line really properly. And let's expand on the budget, you know, but you can't do that unless you have things in line. You have every dollar accounted for and put where you need to be. So with that, again, we're going to be talking about the success from establishing these early habits starting off. Is it's easier to do this from day one than it is 10 years from now, when kind of talking about the first fruits, right? We want to build this budget early on. We want to have these set in stone as soon as possible. And so we know where everything's coming from. Whereas if we look later on in life and we've never built a budget and maybe our spending's a little high and we want to try to rein it back in. It's much harder to do that. It really is. It's much harder to tone down some of those expenses once we've already gotten accustomed to that lifestyle. So we want to make sure that we have a clear vision of our spending. We want to make sure we know what it looks like, what it's laid out for, and have every single dollar accountable so that we can use to the most of our ability. And going into this and talking about the power of saving is going to be looking at small decisions. And again, this is where we're going to start talking about some of the compound interest. Is we're going to have an example here is Chloe. Chloe decided that she wanted to start accumulating wealth, right? She had this shift in mindsets that I want to accumulate wealth, that I want to start growing. And she decided that the easiest place to start was with the coffee. Every single day on her drive to work, she was spending $5 going to Starbucks. And instead she said, hey, I'm going to budget. I'm going to save that. I don't have to do that. I can go to the grocery store, I can get it, and I can save my $5 a day instead of spending it at Starbucks. So what we've run here is going to be a projection of Chloe saving that $5 every single day, and instead she's investing it. And over the course of 40 years, if Chloe started at 25, by the time she retired, that $5 every single day is going to end up to $416,000 by the time she's 65. Once we've invested that and have it grow accordingly. So as you can see, that small change, that $5, that single coffee every single day really can add up. We're talking over $400,000 that can add to the end of your life. And again, so let's say that Chloe started doing that with her $5, and then she said, okay, let's bump it up a step higher. Now she wants to start, instead of eating out every day at lunch, she wants to start bringing her lunch. Say she was averaging $15 a day, she can get that out of her budget, and now she's going to start bringing her food from home. She's going to go to the grocery store and save her $15 a day from lunch. So again, if we already looked at what $5 a day can do, once she adds that in, and now she's adding $15 a day that she's at lunch, that's going to add another $1,670,000 to the projections, as that's going to be the $20 a day on top of it, of the lunch and the coffee, right? Getting us to the $1,670,000. But you can see just $20 a day, how much of an impact that can have. It doesn't have to be some drastic, huge amount to get us to where we want to be at retirement, to the lifestyle we want to live, to the goals we want to achieve. Those can be small decisions like drinking coffee from the house, or instead of going out every day for lunch, you pack it and bring your lunch with you. That $20 can really add up and really start to make a difference later on in life. And so another example that we're going to talk about is, Jennifer and Joe. Jennifer and Joe are both going to be 25 years old, and they both earn $55,000. They both contribute 10% of their pay into their 401k. This is really where we're going to get into the benefit of starting young. Jennifer is going to start contributing at age 25, and she's going to stop completely by the time she's 35. So she's going to have a 10-year window that she's contributing. Joe, on the other hand, is going to delay. He's going to start contributing at 35, and he's going to contribute all the way until he's 65. So Joe's going to have 30 years that he's contributing, whereas Jennifer is only contributing 10 years. So on this next slide, we're going to have a graph to show what that's going to look like. So as I said, Jennifer's going to be contributing first for those first 10 years from age 25 to 35. That 10% of her $55,000 salary has gotten her to $90,000 by the time she's 35. Whereas Joe, on the other hand, he just starts at 35. So Jennifer's at 90,000 and she's going to stop. She's not going to contribute anymore. She's just going to let that grow. Whereas Joe is going to start contributing his 10% and he's going to contribute all the way until 65. So on the next slide, we'll see actually that Joe never catches up to Jennifer. Jennifer's going to end with $1,000 by the time she's 65, and she only contributed for 10 years. Joe, on the other hand, has contributed for the next 30. He never catches her. He's up to $600,000 by the time he's 65 and wants to retire. So this is just one example of how important it is to start young, of how much compound interest really has a benefit the longer and longer you allow it to play out. So with that being said, looking at that, it sounds like all good. You're going to start hearing that there's going to be some negativity coming along the way, right? The stock market is not all good, right? You'll hear of good days and bad days, and you'll start hearing the news. Something right now that's popular is talking about the tariffs and what may happen with the economy. And then all of a sudden, here comes around this guy that we've all met, right? That he's going to dissuade us and tell us, oh, that we don't need to be invested. This is Smarty Pants McVesterson. He's going to show up and tell us that we don't need to be in the stock market, that there's bad days in the stock market, that you can lose your money, that you're going to go down. You need to put all of your money in cash. To him, that is just right where he wants to be, right? It'll never recover. There's a slide that this guy, right? He shows up in our life and he wants to try to give us the gloom and the negative of the stock market. But on this next couple of slides, we're going to show actually the historical returns of the stock market. So on this graph, we have 90 years of historical data for the S&P 500. And now it might not be perfect, right? As we said, there's going to be some years where there's some downturns and some down years. But I don't know about you, Kevin, but when I look at that, I see up and right. I see a pretty diagonal straight line up and to the right of where that chart is growing and it's improving. And so with that being said, right, we're going to have news. There's going to be news where the market may turn and there may be down years in the market. But running this study is actually going to show us really the importance of starting young and also of staying invested. So we ran this data of looking at an annual return of $10,000 invested starting January 2nd through December 31st, 2021. So we're looking at 20 years of data. And what we did is you took $10,000 that you invested in January and what that amount would be with a couple of different scenarios. On the far left here, if we see where we were fully invested, that means that we let that $10,000 stay in the market all the entire time through the highs, the lows, the good years, the bad years, the good days, the bad days, until December 31st of 2021. We would have had that $10,000 grow to $61,685. We would have grown 9.52% each year in that account. And that's if we're staying fully invested. Now, on the contrary, to the bar to the right with that 10 days, that is if you had missed the best 10 days in the market. So out of that 20-year period over, 7,000 days invested in the market, I know the math might not be right because of weekends and things like that, but we have a long track period, right, of time invested in the market. If you had just missed the 10 best days in the market where you weren't invested, where you had listened to the naysayers and said, oh, we need to pull out, we need to get out of the stock market, we don't need to be invested, you would have almost cut your returns in half. Just missing those 10 days, you would have only ended up with $28,260. That's 5.33% return per year. So again, that's not terrible by any means, but that just missing those 10 days would cut you almost in half of the return that you would have had over 20 years. And then as you can see, it continues on and on. If we miss the best 20 days, we're at 2.6%. If we miss the best 30, we're at 0.4. And something really interesting, right? If we miss just the best 40 days, we're actually in the red. We're negative. And this all goes to say that you need to stay fully invested. We need to start young. We need to start early, but we need to make sure to stay invested. We don't need to be scared by bad news because actually a lot of times, historically looking back, some of the best days are actually at the end of some down years in the market. And that's a lot of times when people will say or feel like they really need to get out. But that's really where we need to make sure that we stay invested and we stay confident and know that in the long run, these things are going to continue to go up. And so all that being said, right, we want to make this fun. We don't necessarily have to say, oh, I'm saving for retirement, right? We're accumulating wealth. We are growing. We're growing for our goals, personally, our family, whatever it may be. We're accumulating wealth. And again, small decisions have huge impacts, right? $5 a day for coffee, $15 a day for lunch. That can go and turn into $1 million by the time it's all said and done. And starting early is going to make the greater impact, right? With John and Jennifer. John never caught up to Jennifer because he contributed for 30 years where she only contributed for 10, but she started much sooner than him. And lastly, you're right. Wealth is created in the market. Don't let the volatility scare you. Don't listen to the naysayers and the news. Just know that in the long run, the stock market has gone up and will continue to go up.
And so with this being said, we're going to next touch here on your estate plan and why the estate planning piece of your Simple IRA is important. And that's because whenever you have your Simple IRA, if you pass away, it's going to go to somebody, right? And so we have this here talked about like your primary benefit or your beneficiary designation. It actually supersedes your will. What I mean by that is your will can say everything goes to this person, but if your beneficiary says go over there, that's where the money's going. Right, so you're going to make sure your beneficiaries follow what you want to happen. Now, your primary beneficiary, this is who the money is going to first, right? Most likely this is going to be your spouse. Your contingent beneficiary, this is the person that is the backup. Usually this is like kids or somewhere in that direction. Now, if you don't have a beneficiary on your account, your money is basically going to become part of your estate. The slide says your 401k. You can replace this with your SIMPLE IRA. Your SIMPLE IRA becomes part of your estate and will go through the probate process, which is the court to decide where the money goes. Right, so you need to make sure. It's a simple thing to look at. Log into Schwab or log into wherever your money is at here and say, do I have a beneficiary on my account? Who is it? Is it correct? Is it where I want it to go? Very simple thing, and it's just one last way to make sure the people you care about see the way you care about them whenever you're no longer here. And with that being said, CJ, you want to end us with that?
Absolutely. So within your plan, you are actually entitled to one free meeting. So please reach out and contact us. Contact me and Kevin and our entire Sweet K team if you have any questions about the budget, any questions about starting early. Am I investing properly? Am I saving the right amount? Contact us and reach out. You're entitled to one free meeting per year. And where to go to actually reach us is going to be at the 401ktime.com. So when you go to 401ktime.com, in the top right corner is the contact us button. When you click that, you'll get a form to fill out all your information, and then you can actually click off what it is that you'd like us to go over with you. We can talk about like what I already said. Do you have the right investments? Are my beneficiaries accurate? Am I deferring enough of my salary? Feel free to reach out to us and we can schedule those one-on-one meetings and be able to go about your projections, right? The thing that Kevin was focusing on with your budget. It's your budget. It's your retirement. It's your projections. And that's something that we're more than happy to do. And again, you're entitled to one free meeting per year with us. And to just close it off, right? You have a full team at your disposal of Kevin, myself, but we also have Dan and Brad and Tyler, Kirsten, many people here that are more than happy to help out and help get everything taken care of and squared away with. With that being said, that's the end of our presentation. Kevin, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, the major piece here about this, just to sum all this up, is, this is your retirement. This is your life. Just make sure you're taking the intentional, actionable steps to make sure what you want to have happen in life. As long as you're doing that, whatever it means, you're going to be sitting just fine. So with that being said, thanks for joining us here. This was fun. Hopefully you got some value out of this video. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us and we'll go from there.